Thank you so much for Judy and Jeannie for coming to speak to our volunteers. We helped Judy get elected back in 2020, and it was so much fun. We love Judy. So, and we now have the Jeanne Casteen, her partner of crime this year. So we would love to learn more about this year's election, because after the redistricting, the district has a little bit changed. And of course, instead of Doug, now Jeanne is joining. So we would love to hear from both of you. Thank you so much. And it will be followed by Dave Howard, Arizona Swing Left volunteers, who can actually talk about more about election difference between the California and Arizona, since she was originally from California, I understand. So thank you so much. So take it away, Judy.
Oh, okay. I will start. Well, thank you again so much, Kyoko, for arranging this, and to everybody for being with us today. I just owe you an enormous debt of thanks for all the work that you did in 2020 that helped us get this seat in the state house. So that was great. The not so as great news is that we still wound up just one vote short of a majority. So even though I've been working hard on all the values that we share, we still need to get to hold this seat and get one more in order to win the majority here. And then we have a great chance to win the majority in the Senate with Jeanne Casteen. Just a little refresher on me. I was a teacher for 27 years. I've spent my life here in what is now called LD2. That's where I raised my two boys who are now adults, and took them to soccer and Little League, and started a theater company together, and then volunteered in classrooms after I retired, and then volunteered as a co-founder of Desert Progressives Indivisible after the 2016 election that I know was the thing that activated so many of us. So I am honored to be representing my community at this point, but I also know that we have a real opportunity to change the balance of power in Arizona. And that's why I am running again, so that we can at least tie in the House and win the majority in the state Senate. As many of you know, our current situation is that we have children at 25%. 25% of our children have no permanent qualified teacher in their classroom, because our legislature has continued to fail to fund our schools. And as you may have seen in the news, Arizona has been ground central on attacks on our freedom to vote, kind of all attached to that big lie. And we have defeated as many of those terrible bills as possible, but we need to make sure that we are taking the majority so that we can move our state forward in so many ways. We have a tremendous drought that we're facing, that we need to be focused on water conservation. We have an affordable housing crisis. We need to be addressing that. But instead, the current majority is just focused mainly on dividing people and culture wars. So I am running again so that we can move Arizona forward. Thank you so much. Everything that you do makes a difference for us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeanne Casteen, who is a tremendous candidate for state Senate. I'm so excited to be running with her. Jeanne, take it away.
There we go. Sorry, I'm much more comfortable in front of my computer, but I'm actually tabling at an event today in downtown Phoenix. So thank you so much for allowing me and Judy to talk to your members. And thank you to all of your members for volunteering to help us turn Arizona blue. For those of you who don't know me, I am a teacher like Judy. I'm a mother. Both of my children are adults as well. And I'm also a former school board president of a small K-8 district here in Central Phoenix. I really didn't think I would ever run for office, but I ran in 2012 because I saw very quickly that I couldn't affect the kind of change for my students that I wanted to confine within the four walls of my classroom. And so I took it to the boardroom. I have been, or I sat there until 2020. In 2020, again, certainly never thought I would run for office in the fourth largest county in the United States, but that is just what I did. I wanted to take my knowledge and skill set that I learned in the boardroom and take it to the Maricopa County School Superintendent's office, where I missed it by 0.6%. So the fact that you all are helping with these down ballot races in a state that's not even your own is just really incredible to me. So my day job, I work as for a nonprofit where we do advocacy work. So this session, I started spending a lot of time at the Capitol, and you know, that one vote really makes a difference. Poor Judy gets silenced, condescended to. You know, less than 1% of the bills that even make it to a committee hearing that the Democrats put forward, less than 1% even get a committee hearing. So this year is really different. We're seeing conspiracy theorists show up at our Capitol. We're hearing the conspiracy theories come from members in the audience, as well as people on the other side of the dais. So it's really critical right now. We have over 100 bills, I believe, that are attacking our voting freedoms. And so we really need all hands on deck. In the Creighton School District, we were able to really kind of take care of the needs of the whole child. You know, Judy mentioned that 25% of our students don't have a highly qualified teacher in the front. We also have over 20% of our children living in poverty. So when I was on the board in Creighton, we were able to start a supper program because for many of our kids, that was the only time that they would eat was at school. So we expanded it to include suppers. We opened a bilingual preschool for students living far below the poverty line. We opened a family resource center because we know that when the parents do better, then they'll be able to better support their children and improve the outcomes for everybody. So that same kind of stuff can happen at the legislature, but instead, what's happening is this focus on culture wars, you know, attacks on reproductive rights, attacks on our voting freedoms, attacks on our public schools, sending public school money to private schools. And so I'm really excited to get in there because the only way that anybody will ever listen to Judy or that will get things that we really need, like focus on the drought that's happening here in Arizona, focusing on our public schools that are wildly underfunded, focusing on protecting our LGBTQ youth. Those are the things that Arizona really needs. And so you all are going to make that happen. I just want to say how grateful I am to your group for focusing on Arizona and helping us turn it blue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So now, do we have any question for Judy and Jeanne? Ward? Brenda? Moban?
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Okay. Go ahead, Ward.
No, Judy, can you tell me a little bit about your district? I know, but just a little bit about the demographics and maybe a little bit about your opponent.
Sure, of course. So our district changed pretty significantly. I mean, there's a core part that's the same, but we lost the western part of our district, which is where one of the schools that I taught is located. The other school where I taught is still in my district. And then it goes way north to an area that is being newly developed. There are some wealthier populations out in that area, as well as a lot of development in the semiconductor business and industry. So we are mainly, though, just a suburban district. We have some percentages of minorities, Hispanics, Asians, African Americans, but it's a primarily white middle class population. My opponents are the Republicans. One of them is an incumbent like me. His name is Justin Wilmoth. He and I and the guy who is now Jeannie's opponent, whose name is Steve Kaiser, he's going to be running for the state Senate but he came into the House with Justin Wilmoth and me in 2020. So we're all fairly new on that. They are big on privatization. They have run bills supporting expansion of gun rights, but also a bill that would would say that people don't have to pay sales tax on guns or ammunition, and yet you have to pay sales tax on diapers and feminine hygiene products and other things that are real necessities. So I think there's a real contrast between us. They are big on school privatization, and so there is quite a contrast.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how the two of you are battling in the culture war front. What types of arguments, what types of images you're trying to project onto your competition?
Well, I think just pointing out, I mean, one of the bills that our opponents have been leaders on is 2161, that started out as teachers have to immediately report anything that a student shares with the teacher to the parents, including if the student comes out to a teacher, and that the teacher could be sued and could even lose their teaching certificate if they don't immediately turn around and inform the parents of that information, even if the student says, my parents will kick me out of the house, or my parents will beat me, or whatever. So I think we are trying to point out the contrast between people who are demanding something that could endanger our students and families versus those of us who are wanting to make sure that we are supporting our students and our families. We're not trying to hide anything from anybody, but we are trying to honor our students right where they are. And I guess the big thing that I continually try to point out is that bills like this are really creating a wedge and creating a divide between parents and teachers who ordinarily really do work well together. I mean, teachers know that we need parent involvement in order for students to succeed. And we are constantly reaching out to parents and providing opportunities and ways to contact us. And sometimes that's really an uphill battle. So it's really ironic that all of a sudden we're seeing so many bills that seem to be attacking teachers for not communicating with parents when teachers are consistently trying to do that. I posted something on social media this morning. It was an article from NPR that pointed out a survey that they had taken that showed, even though there are all these bills that are attacking teachers, that supposedly are coming from Republican grassroots people, the survey shows the vast majority of parents, overwhelming majority, like in the 80%, are happy with their local public schools and appreciate their local school teachers, their children's teachers. So this, I keep trying to point out that this is a wedge issue that seeks to divide us instead of, as leaders, we should be leaders in creating paths and avenues for dialogue between teachers and parents.
Can I add something to Judy?
Yes, please.
So another thing is, I was grateful that you posted that, because we've kind of been the innovators when it comes to pushing teachers out of the classroom, unfortunately, here in Arizona, but it mostly affected, schools in, 4 zip codes and Title I schools and things like that. But what's happening now is we're seeing a teacher retention crisis in the suburbs and in schools that are, have amazing honors programs or AP opportunities and things like that. So that's really helpful. I mean, the parents that I've spoken with are kind of actually outraged at the behaviors of what's going on, because they are losing good teachers for their kids. Another thing that I find helpful too is kind of just pointing out the hypocrisy sometimes, you know, at the same time that they passed a 15-week abortion ban here, they also made it more difficult for people to adopt and foster kids. So, you know, kind of pointing out that hypocrisy is, for me, helpful. And when you can actually sit down and talk or get on the phone and talk to them, most of the time we share a lot more common ground than not. So pointing out hypocrisy and education is number one on everybody's minds, because it's always in the news that Arizona is constantly in the bottom 3 with Mississippi and Alabama. And the people of Arizona don't want that.
Right.
Can I ask for some amplification on this? You know, you talk about, you know, these various issues coming up, and it reminds me of the kind of astroturf issues that were promulgated during the Obama administration. And I'm wondering if there isn't some kind of consistency between the fights and battles that are going on in Arizona with other battles that are going on across the country, and whether these are being promulgated by, you know, the Koch, you know, enterprises and all of the other Americans for Freedom outfits.
Well, you're absolutely right. So much of what we're hearing in bills are from Koch-sponsored organizations and ALEC. They are part of a national agenda to make sure that Republicans hold on to power. I mean, I think they see the handwriting on the wall that the more people who vote, the less likely they are to win, because our vision is one of making sure that everybody gets their chance to thrive, not just people who are wealthy or whatever. And we haven't talked about this, but another thing that just happened is that the Republicans were able to throw out a referendum that citizens spent the heat of last summer collecting signatures for, to let the people of Arizona vote on whether they wanted this flat tax that the Republicans were promoting. The flat tax, which sounds so good, you know, would actually, the effect would be that the richest Arizonans would get a $350,000 a year tax cut, and the rest of us would get an average of about $49 a year tax cut. So a big part of the contrast that I think that we need to strike with our opponents are that we want to make sure everybody gets their chance to thrive, not just the wealthiest Arizonans, because it is the job of government. We are the government, and we are the ones that want to make sure that that people have the services that they need, that we have the roads and the bridges and the schools and are taking care of water crises and affordable housing crises. That those are things that benefit everyone. And that's why it's important that we have a role in that. And rather than just giving away practically $2 billion a year in tax cuts to the wealthiest Arizonans, which is what's going to happen now as a result of this overthrow by the courts of the referendum that people worked so hard to put on the ballot, and now will not be on the ballot.
But I'm wondering if, you know, staying in the weeds with all these various things that you want to do is the appropriate strategy, or is it more appropriate to call out the evildoers on the other side, you know, the wealthy that are funding all these programs, and the, you know, the nationwide groups that are funding these programs? I'm just wondering what kind of, you know, fierceness in the battle we can bring to combating the other side, not just promoting ourselves.
Well, that's a great point. And I think I tend to get too much in the weeds myself, but it is important to point out the larger themes, I think, of right now. We have a government that's watching out for the wealthiest, and they're doing it at the behest of national influences. And we represent the people of Arizona. We want to represent our neighbors who want to make sure that we have affordable housing and healthcare and education for our students so that everybody gets their chance to succeed. And I think it's really important to include that second part, because I want to make sure that we're not just attacking our opposition, but that we are truly providing an alternate vision of what we hear our neighbors want and what we are fighting for on their behalf.
Yeah, I'm
Thank
with you.
you
I think contrast
so
is
much.
important.
Yes, so it's a big picture is also important as well. And thank you so much for being here with us today. Jeannie, would you like to add anything else?
No, just to say thank you for spending some time on your Saturday to help us change the makeup of the legislature, because we need all hands on deck. So I appreciate you all very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we will let you go, and Deborah will talk about more about Arizona elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We're hitting the streets.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Dave, it's your turn. So tell us about how this legislative district works, because that's totally different from California. So that's first thing. And anything you can tell us about LD2 and nesting election stuff.
Okay. Well, LD2, I think Judy did a great job talking about the district, and it's mostly northern Phoenix suburbs. There's some like Honeywell or Raytheon has a big plant there, but mostly it's for those, it's bedroom communities, essentially. It's north of downtown Phoenix. And the district was expanded far north, if you know Phoenix freeway system, there's the 101 loop. And pretty much everything within the 101 loop is either blue or trending blue. Judy's district is half south of the 101, but then extends far north of the 101 and pulled in all of those new or many new, much more conservative neighborhoods. So it really changed her district makeup. It is a very competitive district. Judy, as an incumbent, is in a great position to be reelected. And she is really a perfect candidate in that she really has lived and worked in the district from both a professional and engaged in the community. She didn't mention this, but she was a founder of Theater Works as well. And so everybody that you talk to knows Judy or something that she's been involved with in this capacity. So that's a really good thing. She is running as a single shot candidate, and as a California transplant, it took me at least 2 cycles to figure out what that meant and why that made sense. But in Arizona, they have, and I contrast this to California, where you have 40 Senate districts and 80 assembly districts, and they don't overlap. I mean, some of them might overlap, but they're certainly not nested and identical. Arizona has only 30 legislative districts. And for the Senate, they elect somebody every 2 years for one person for that legislative district. And in that very same district, every single 2 years, they elect 2 members to the state legislature. So the complete cadre of legislative leaders or legislative representatives is 90 people, 60 in the House of Representatives, the Arizona House, and 30 in the Senate, and they are elected every 2 years. It makes, it kind of boggles my mind how that isn't challenged, but that is the way it works right now. So in order to, and Arizona also has, you might associate some of the politicians in Arizona with the word maverick. And so some of the Arizona voters also kind of fancy themselves as mavericks as well. And so they sort of like splitting their vote. So Judy's running as a single shot candidate because for those Democrats that are going to go to the polls, our base, we can say, vote one and done. Mark Judy's name on your ballot and leave everything else blank. For those Republicans that go to the polls or those independents who like splitting their votes, Judy will get some of those votes and one of those votes will go to the Republican, possibly. So other people who are smarter than me have worked out the mathematics of this that basically say running a single shot candidate increases the odds in a competitive district like this of electing somebody from the challenged party. And this district does slightly trend Republican. So Mark Kelly won this district with a slight percentage of 50.3%. Joe Biden lost it at 48.94%. So it's a very tight district. So running a single shot candidate is our best option to be able to re-elect Judy to the House. Now, Jeannie's in a little bit of a different situation, and because the Senate, we have to get to 15 to tie and 16 to have the majority. It's a little bit different. And Jeannie is a fabulous candidate as well, for all the reasons that she highlighted, but also in 2020, she ran countywide as to be the superintendent of county schools. And so people have seen her name before and they have had the opportunity to vote for her. So we're building on that platform as well. So that is a little bit more about the structure of that. And I'll just, want to emphasize that I think Judy answered to Van's question about creating the contrast. I think in every issue you talk about, whether it's education, whether it's criminal justice, I mean, the faction of Republicans in the state that have taken over the Republican Party in the name of Trump are about, I mean, they have been in control of schools for decades, for 20 years at least, and everything, and they're last on the list. And it's so bad in public schools that even Republicans are talking about it now, but their solutions are to perpetuate the same problems they've created in the past. Let's privatize, let's attack teachers, let's do this. Our position as Democrats is we put students first. We're about giving students the quality education and the opportunity. Our students do not need to be put in, this saran wrap protection of, oh my gosh, they can't learn about anything controversial in history. They can't learn about, events of the world. They have the capacity to learn, and we want them to do that. We don't want them to go into the world being hindered by a very limited view of the world and experience. So when Judy says, we want everyone to have the opportunity to thrive, that fundamentally is the message of Democrats across the board this year. Everybody deserves that opportunity.
Yeah, and we do actually have the similar problem in our blue county. So I can see that message should resonate very well this year. Is there any question to Deb?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for spending the Saturday morning
to help, and Judy has been canvassing since October. Just this afternoon, we have a house party. We've been doing house parties probably about 2 times a month, with somewhere between 100 people and 10 at each one. That's both fundraising, recruiting volunteers, and just letting neighbors meet the candidates. So I think from a California perspective, this part of Arizona is really very focused on the retail politics, the one-on-one. Jeannie was at an event tabling today. So it's like both of these candidates are out in the community every single day. Judy actually has a real job at the legislature, and they're still meeting, but they're really focused on this, and I think you can have a lot of confidence that they're doing everything they can to
Yes.
make themselves available and approachable to voters.
Yeah, and for us to make calls, we'll kind of release them to do those in-person contacts.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's great.
yeah. Mary, do you have anything to add?
Oh, yeah, I was just kind of listening, and I always appreciate Deb's take on things. So no, not really, just that we are so appreciative of Swing Left and especially your group. You made so many calls last cycle, and you absolutely were instrumental in getting Judy elected. So we so appreciate that you're willing to jump back in and help again. And thank you, Deb, for sharing your insights. You do have a really good take coming from kind of both camps. So I think that was valuable. And I'm really glad you invited our team to join you today, Kyoko. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we are now calling the independent for the support ID, right?
They are about 80% independents. We do have some of those moderate Republicans in there. And I've talked to a few of them at the door, and, you know, they do want to hear these messages, the ones that I've seen so far. We're just getting started. So we'll take it as it comes. And there's also Democrats in there who don't vote regularly enough, who don't necessarily always vote Democrat. So not the high efficacy Dems, but those that we kind of need to make sure that they know there's a reason to vote for Democrats in 2022.
Yeah, so Mary is actually the district manager for Judy, and we actually interacted in 2020 as well. So I'm so happy to work with you again.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Deb, anything to add?
No, other than you guys are my heroes. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us. So we are gonna stop this portion of the event and start making calls. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Take care.